social and communal harmony. And this is an early Buddhist text. So there's a lot of repetition because, of course, they weren't writing it down. Everything was memorization. And so everything's repeated, and very basic. And the other thing I wanted to say is that this book, the preface and the epilogue, the prologue and the epilogue were by Hozan Alan Sunaki, who is currently in the hospital having suffered a heart attack and is in, I think, very critical condition at this point. And I do believe from reading the beginning of this book that he was very instrumental in getting this book printed. So just want to dedicate to Alan our practice. We'll mention him in the well-being too later. So I'm just going to start with the general introduction. And so apparently the Buddha was asked, how should the monastics and the community live together in harmony? And so this is about kind of how do people get along? And so in the general introduction, Bhikkhu Bodhi says that he's highlighted the right understanding that fosters ethical conduct. And this is sometimes called mundane right view, in contrast to world transcending right view, the penetrating insight into the emptiness and essenceless nature of all conditioned things. So in this one, we're really talking about the right understanding that, as Nhat Hanh has said, the only article of faith that you really need to have in Buddhism is the article of faith that the Buddha was not mistaken when he said about the Four Noble Truths, that he said there is suffering, there's a cause of suffering, there's an end to suffering, and there's a path that leads to the end of suffering. And so all of us that are doing this now, we're on the path that leads to the end of suffering. That's what we're up to. And so the right understanding piece is that this understanding is that there is cause and effect, there is cause and condition, there is karma, and that's the basis for our moral action. And this is interesting to me because I've been interested in kind of the intersectionality of religions and world religions. And everybody has to have this part. They have to, because you can't just say, well, be good. And if you're good, everything's going to come out all right and be great, because it often isn't, right? So in order to, I think, to put some weight into our morals or moral value, most, I think all the world religions have come up with some sort of afterlife or heaven or some greater vision that helps us when it gets difficult, to say, well, it's for this higher purpose. And because the beginning of this book and the general introduction, they talk about, the interesting thing is that in the Buddhist time, there were also philosophers that held different views, just as we've had Western philosophers. Like there's one that says one of the philosophies of that time was a nihilistic view or a nihilistic view, like Nietzsche, that it didn't matter, that there wasn't any cause and effect, that whatever you did, and when you die, and that was it. And so the Buddha's saying, no, that isn't right understanding. That right understanding is saying that there is some like universal order, that there is basic goodness, that there is a sense of right and wrong, and that, you know, basic kindness and goodness have intrinsic value. And I think that we have to, you know, have that. And, you know, whether or not, you know, in our society, in our kind of scientific way of thinking, we're saying, well, I don't know that I really believe in heaven and hell, and that these things are, you know, is this really true? And yet, a more major portion of Buddhists in the world do have the belief that if we're good and have loving kindness and do the right thing, that that the goal is to be reborn in a Pure Land or in Amitabha's realm, heavenly realm. And yet it's not necessary to have that belief. I mean, here it's saying the Buddha himself seems to have recognized that morality can be established on the basis of self-reflection and ethical reasoning without requiring a belief in personal survival after death. So without getting too much into the weeds on philosophy, it's just interesting to me that that these issues have been brought up, you know, over the centuries of like how we going to live, and I think too that there is, especially in Zen, we're pretty bare bones about it. We're not so much thinking about doing mantras to be reborn in Tushita heaven or in Amitabha's Pure Land. But we do chant, and we're chanting for our sick friends, and we're there is that bigger picture. And we can even say, well, we're the Buddha, you know, we are Buddha nature. But it isn't just our little small self that, you know, I think it when we understand that, it's in a vaster sense that we're the whole universe, you know. I mean, we look at these pictures of the Hubble, the pictures that are coming back from space, and they're so amazing. And they're like, they look to me like pictures of neural pathways inside our own brain, or how our blood vessels course through our body. I mean, the micro and the macro are so similar. And I was reading a book the other day on it's called Living is Dying by Zonzar Khenche Rinpoche. He's a modern Rinpoche from Bhutan. And he was talking about, well, what if, you know, and I you know, Carol Holmes, you probably know more about this than I, but you know, if at the moment of death we think, oh, this is a moment that I might be able to really experience the ground of my basic nature, my ground of awareness, this moment. And if we kind of steer toward that curiosity and wondering what is going to happen now, and having that devotion to, like, well, if everything we experience is our projection, then why not project our being reborn in Abhidhamma's Pure Land? I mean, why not, right? And this is another piece that's really been interesting to me is at Constance's Hoshinsiki ceremony at the end of the practice period, one of the questions was, how do we pray? Who do we pray to? What is prayer, right? And Constance, you answered it so beautifully in the look within ourselves and find that. And it was a beautiful answer. And then I was like, well, I'm interested in that. Like, I was raised atheist agnostic, and so I never knew about prayer really. And so it's like, what do we find, or how do we find this this spirit, this being, this wholeness that's greater than ourselves, that we pray to, or that we invoke, or imagine, or dwell in? And I think especially I'm thinking about prayer now because of Gaza and the whole kind of world situation, and the amount of grief and suffering that we experience, even if we just take half a teaspoonful of the news every day. It's still really difficult to tolerate. And so I'm finding that prayer is so nourishing and helpful and beautiful. And we do it in our metta prayer. We do it with Tong Lin, and we I mean, I think that we could find whatever beautiful image or mantra, or we do it when we sew our raksu, and we say, Namo Kai Butsu. We're saying we plunge into our true nature, we dive into our wholeness. And so with that aspiration and that kind of feeling of our loving kindness, that we want to extend that out to the whole world. And yeah. My favorite is well, Om Mani Padme Hum, to the jewel in the lotus, to Avalokiteshvara, or Kuan Yin, or Kanon, Tara. Avalokiteshvara, when they the thousand-armed Kanon, when she was crying for the pain of the world, and her head split open, and so could look in all directions. And then the head went up, to, I think it's 11 or 12 heads on top. And all the hands went out with all the eyes, 1,000 hands and 1,000 eyes. And then Tara was born of Avalokiteshvara's tears. And she is ready to help in all directions. And so I just think that that the universe is so much vaster and greater and amazing than we can even imagine or think about, that why not? Why not just pray to whoever or offer our heartfelt loving compassion and kindness out to the world in whatever way we can imagine to do that. And yeah. So whether or not we believe or don't believe, or imagine or don't imagine that our consciousness continues beyond our physical death of our body. And that's always, you know, now Han would put it more in the the tree grows and the leaves bud out, and then they fall in the fall and they go down into the ground, and they're turned into soil, and worms have them, and then flowers grow up again, or the, you know, the images of clouds and rain. Another way of thinking about rebirth is a candle. And if you light one candle with another candle, is the flame of the second candle the same flame or a different flame? And you can't really say that it's the same flame, but you also can't really say that it's a different flame. And who's to say that there isn't Mount Meru and the 4 continents surrounding Mount Meru and the 5 Buddha families who dwell in the continents around Mount Meru. And apparently our solar system, our galaxy, is in the western continent of that greater cosmology, which is just kind of totally mind-blowing. I mean, good Lord, you know? So so getting back to the mundane right understanding that helps us be kind to each other on a daily basis, and helps us you know, do unto others as others would do unto us, and have basic moral principles. It's both and, to me. It's both and. And I just thought it would be nice to do some Tonglen taking and sending meditation for whoever, I mean, for whoever we want to. So if everybody's okay with that, I thought we could just do a few minutes of it. And just to review, so Pema Chodron also talks about it like on the spot taking and sending, on the spot. And I do it for myself, you know, if I've caught up in a mental thing of well, I said the wrong thing, or I haven't done enough, or whatever the stuff is going on. She says, just do taking and sending for everyone in the world who feels that way. And I think that it brings it brings a greater picture. It like gets us out of our small self and into this bigger kind of communion with everything. And so she says you start out with just being, which is like flashing absolute bodhicitta, just our zazen mind, our zazen body. We're just being and breathing and expansive. And then it's really like a meditation expanded, I think. So we can start with our own pain, our own discomfort, our own illness, sickness, or we can start with those around us, whatever comes to one. Then the inhalation is you visualize that pain and anyone else in the whole world who's feeling that way. You bring in all of that suffering into oneself, and not to hold it, not to be taking negative energy and holding it, but just in the sense of breathing in. And she says work with texture, hot, heavy, dense, that type of feeling, and then breathing it out with whatever the relief would be. So if the relief would be coolness, calm, peacefulness, encouragement, feeling good. Sometimes I notice that when it is a really sticky mind state, that when I try to breathe out the antidote or what would be the relief, sometimes I can't even think of it. So it takes a minute to kind of be like, what would be the healing balm for this particular brand of suffering that I'm feeling right now? So we could do that. We could let's take a few minutes and just breathe in at wherever you are with that. Breathe it in, and then breathing out the relief, the coolness, the calm sense of peace, the healing. And then once again, breathing in the suffering that we are hearing about or experiencing or hearing about in the world or within ourselves. And breathing out loving kindness, compassion. I'm breathing in. When I think of war, I breathe in the bombs and the terror, and breathe out that they turn to flowers, that people have food and blankets, that people have peace, that even the peace that surpasses understanding, as we say, that peace beyond circumstance, that even though one is in a suffering situation, one is ill, one is, that there's a still place in that we have peace within it. And I think Mary and I were talking the other day, and we were saying, it's not it's not the suffering, it's the how we take it. It's so we're breathing in whatever difficulty and breathing out the positive benefit, and expand it and expand it and expand it. And then when it feels finished, can allow that whatever images or visualization or thoughts or in the mind, just allow it all to come back to stillness and to our center, and just breathing in and out right here and right now. We can again flash on our absolute bodhicitta, that we have this great loving heart and this compassion for the whole world, because we are the whole world. And so for me, thinking about how to be a bodhisattva in the world, or how to help in the world, how to I mean, for me, it's both things. I want to I've been getting more involved in social justice and activities, and you know um helping with food drive to get the food bank, and I started going to working in a prison, teaching meditation and doing things like that. But there's also, what do you do about these these endless wars, and the fact that there's endless suffering in the world, and it is, the Buddha would say, this is the nature of the human existence. and this is what we have, but we also feel compelled to live in harmony with each other and with the earth, and so I find I'm relying more and more on prayer. Taking and sending is, I mean, I think that's such a great prayer. Or doing mantras, or just visualizing that. So I doing the other day, I was visualizing that a huge net was over Gaza, this like Indra's net, jeweled net with all these jewels, and that was just protecting the whole place. And then whenever any weapons would fall on it, they would just turn to flowers, the way when the Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree and Mara tried to shoot arrows, that they all just turned to flowers and rained to the ground. And because why not? Why not? Right? I mean, what else are we gonna do? So anyway, I've been talking and talking, but well, let's see. Maybe we could just write in this group. If anybody would like to unmute and say how you feel about, or what do you do for to send out good energy into the world, to wish for the benefit of all beings. Anybody?